I'm Iris Ruth Pastor, and I'm here with Hannah Seligson, author of A Little Bit Married, making a little small talk on a very big subject, which is long-term no-commitment relationships. So welcome, Hannah.
Thank you. Great to be here.
You wrote a book entitled A Little Bit Married, which focuses on how to deal with the bumps and lumps of living together without a firm commitment or plan. And some have deemed this that it looks a whole lot like marriage without actually being one. And I was wondering if you could describe that kind of relationship to us.
Sure. And just to clarify, it's not just people who live together. You can be a little bit married and not live together and be planning vacations, going away with your significant other's family, be moving for the other person. So it's not just cohabitation. There are many permutations of it. And so if you were to sort of take an aerial view of what a little bit married looks like, it would look a lot like marriage, but without the marriage license. So these are people who in many cases do live together, are planning their lives around each other, even buying real estate together, own pets together. Essentially, are doing things 60 or 70 years ago would have most likely culminated in marriage.
Well, I liked one of your examples was talking on the phone with the other person's parents or taking vacations with the families. So these are all things that they're doing, but they're doing it without a formal marriage certificate.
Right, exactly. And to be clear, this isn't necessarily going to replace marriage. This is really a stopgap between dating and marriage. As young people delay marriage until their late 20s or early 30s, they're finding these new kind of marriage-light arrangements until they actually enter into the institution.
So why are we seeing this trend towards long-term no-commitment relationships? Because years ago, people did not live together. They normally got married.
Exactly. So it's a very sort of modern phenomenon, although I did interview one anthropologist who said that in tribal societies, way back when, they did used to have permutations of a little bit married. But today we're seeing it for so many reasons. First of all, as I mentioned before, the age of a first marriage is the highest it's ever been. It's 27.1 for a man and 25.6, I think, for a woman, and tips even higher in many urban areas. We're also seeing this concept that people just today take longer and longer to grow up. Adulthood doesn't really start until 30 in many cases. And there are also a number of kind of psychological factors. I found in my research that many young men and young women wanted to get it right. They didn't want to make a mistake with their significant other, with their, soon-to-be husband or wife, which is understandable. And so that period of wanting to be sure, it takes a long time.
Do you think, Hannah, that in my generation, it was more that you went to college and then you got married, and so many of those marriages ended in divorce? So do you think our children's generation, my children's generation, is kind of reacting to that and saying, wow, I've seen so many divorces among my parents and their friends, we don't want to go through this?
Exactly. I think the legacy of the boomers' kind of marriage failure rate is having a big impact on not to put it so crudely, it's having a big impact on this generation. These are children who were shuttled between parents' houses, grew up in acrimonious homes, and really are scarred by that legacy. And I think that's impacted this generation. And the thing is that the marital ambitions of this generation, as they are in the workplace and in other areas of their lives, are very high, and they want a lot out of their marriages. So you sort of couple that with the legacy of these sort of, in many cases, traumatic family experiences, and it's no wonder that they're hesitant about entering the institution. But they do want to enter it. They just want to make sure that they're entering it with the right person.
Well, that's understandable. Do you feel that your book is kind of like a modern day advice manual? And if it does serve like that, do you have some advice for navigating the long-term relationship? Are there some do's and don'ts?
Yeah, so I definitely think that my book is a modern day advice manual, if I can be so grandiose about my own work. But I also think that it's sort of a hybrid advice book, but also a sociological study. I'm a journalist, so I did a lot of research. I interviewed over 100 a little bit marrieds for the book, as well as a slew of experts. So it's a study and it's an advice manual. There's so many pieces of advice for this relationship stage. It's very much uncharted territory for many couples. I would say that the biggest sin of a little bit married is not communicating about what things mean, because you're going along, you're in this gray area, it's ambiguous. What does it all mean? And there's some gender politics of talking about this. namely that I think women are, and I found this in my reporting, are sometimes hesitant to bring up the big question of where is this going, what is happening. And what I found with many couples is that there can often be on different pages about what significant relationship markers mean.
Oh, that is interesting. So give us like a relationship marker that would kind of cause confusion. What's an example of one?
Well, moving in together, which is something between 70 and 90% of young people will move in together before they get married. So what does it mean? Does it mean that you're just doing it because it's convenient? Both your leases are up. It sounds like a fun idea to buy a lot of furniture together and start decorating. Or does it mean that you're on the pathway to getting married? Does the other person want to try it out and see what it's like to live with you? Is this kind of a test phase? Are you on trial? Or is it just because it seems fun and convenient? And sort of opening up, uncorking that conversation about what that step in the relationship means for both of you.
Well, I think also something that would complicate it is how do, in particular, Jewish parents view this coupling without a certificate? I know it's always that quote, you don't have to buy the cow if you're getting the milk kind of thing. So do Jewish parents tend to have misgivings when their children move in together, or are they comfortable?
Well, I think the why buy the cow when you get the milk for free is not just a Jewish mentality. I think a lot of parents and a lot of people think that, but that's kind of a really outdated thing to say or viewpoint. And I mean, my sort of equally glib answer to that is, well, you really love the cow. So, and I didn't segment my research by religion, but I think that if you look at a lot of religious groups, and my book was blogged about by a Catholic site, and so I think religious communities tend to have more conservative views about moving in together. And it's not something I don't mean to be sort of offhanded about it, and I do think that the decision is something to be taken seriously. I think generally parents want their kids to be happy and make good decisions, and so I think you get into this sort of complicated area, which is how much should parents be weighing in on their children's decision to move in with their significant others, and what is the parent's role now for this generation of a little bit marrieds?
Okay, so what is the parent's role?
Well, I think that it's a tricky balancing act. This is a generation of helicopter parents who hovered over their kids, but they're also close with their kids, and so I think it's a time for the parents to communicate and talk to their children. I'm a little bit married. My mom and I talk about it. I don't always take her advice on everything, but I think as the little bit marrieds kind of integrate into the other person's family, it's important to have open and honest communication about it. But it's also, I don't think the parent's place to say, well, you should or you shouldn't do this.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I have one final question. How do you decide when you're in a committed relationship like this, if you're being too picky about certain things? I mean, does that come up as a problem? Because when you live with somebody, and if you're kind of doing on a trial basis, do you find that people are focusing in on really picky issues and not looking at the big overall picture?
Yeah, I do see. I think that happens more in the dating trenches. I don't know if you're making some reference to the new book called Marry Him. There was Lori Gottlieb wrote a book about sort of this is the plague of modern women, and
right.
The reason why we're still single. I think that is a horribly overstated argument on her part. I think that, but I do think that the romantic expectations of this generation are very high. But I think once people get into the a little bit married situation and they're living together, they've been dating for a long period of time, pickiness isn't necessarily the biggest issue. I think the bigger issue for a little bit married is this ambiguity in how they choose to deal with it.
That was very interesting, the points that you brought up on that, something that I hadn't even considered either. Do you have anything to add at this time? Any, like a website or anything like that you would like to make our viewers aware of?
Sure. So my website is www.hannahseligson.com, and you can buy the book on Amazon.com.
Okay, and thank you, Hannah, for being with us today, and good luck with your wonderful new book, A Little Bit Married. I'm Iris Ruth Pastor. You're welcome. A contributor to Let My People Know, an outreach engagement initiative. Thank you, Hannah.